Hello and welcome to What Is My Podcast About? Though this is a Wimpy Bite edition where we're going to be following up our trend of going through all of the JoJo Bizarre Adventure storylines. My name is Keith, and as always, I am joined by Peter Akerley
Hey!
and Matthew Grace.
Hello!
So we've finally got to, I think, one of the more famous JoJo storylines. Not to say Stardust Crusaders wasn't popular, but Diamond is Unbreakable. When I ask most people, this is where they kind of got introduced into JoJo. It was either this or Stardust Crusaders.
That's fair.
I
Yeah,
can
this one
see
was.
that.
I can see why people would, like, if you had a friend, you're like, oh, you gotta watch JoJo, watch it with me. This is what they would use to kind of introduce them to it.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think any of the earlier seasons were a bad place to jump in, though.
oh, definitely not. And I think the big thing about Diamond is Unbreakable and why it is so popular as it is ultimately this is the arc that fully establishes the whole concept of stands to like quite the degree in the world. Where the rest of them kind of like it was more about the story, like they had a goal and they're all the thing they focus on is getting to that goal, and there's other side things that don't really matter aside from explaining a few things. But this one is the first big leap at explaining the world, I find.
Yeah, that's fair.
And because of that, this will be the baseline you'll need for almost everything JoJo going forward.
Yeah, everything after this point, you will strongly, well, without having watched everything after this, the amount of world building that happens this one seems like it would be hugely beneficial to familiarize yourself with this one before watching any of the other stuff.
Exactly.
Also, that reason there is part of why I had such a hard time actually making myself sit down and go through the series. Because, as you said, this season focuses mainly on the world building
Yeah.
and how all the stands work and all that, which is quite interesting. I especially like how we get introduced to some stand users who don't even have control over their stands.
Yeah, we get a bunch of rules about stands, and there's stand users that, up to this point, if you're a stand user, you're fighting something. And we have most of the characters that are stand users in this, like, they just use it for their job, as mentioned with the chef on episode 10, who literally just makes food with it. And there's also the fairy godmother, who her whole thing is just, cosmetics, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of all of that, to me, like each episode, like outside of the overlying arc of this is how people have been getting stands, there's a mystery behind this whole bow and arrow type thing, and how that came to be. But outside of that, it's just something happens here, something happens there, something happens there. We get a few pieces of connected things sprinkled throughout, and there's a couple little arcs throughout the season. But it didn't feel like it had a fully connected story to me, like
I can see where
the
you're
last
coming from.
season did.
I almost kind of argue the opposite, though, just because this season and last season both felt very Monster of the Weeky. Like, yes, there was an overarching plot that they were kind of building up as it went on. I liked the way this one handled it a little bit more, just because of the fact that it kind of felt like it was doing a lot of world building, whereas in my experience with fucking Stardust Crusaders, it was a lot of we're here, now we're here, now we're here, and we're not really discussing why. I mean, yes, we know why we're traveling to Egypt. It's to find Dio, but there wasn't really a lot of interconnectedness between individual episodes from my experience. But this one, because it all kind of took place in the same place and was all kind of developing the city of Morio, or however you pronounce it, as it went along, I liked the way this one handled it a little bit better.
Yeah, the thing with this one, and I feel like it could be a misconception or like the hardest part a lot of people have getting into this one is Josuke might be the JoJo of this arc, but he's not the main character. The town is actually the main character.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the connective tissue between all of it is. So really it's kind of almost like a lot of the story is a bunch of vignettes, but ultimately the whole premise of this story is who's making these stand users and why are these people kind of just disappearing in this town. They actually kind of hint at, and I don't know if you guys caught, but Kira does show up in the series quite a bit. Not just his scenes where it's like you see the person just talking with a hand, but in the background of a lot of scenes, Kira's just there. He's just walking through the streets, and it's a neat little way of tying him through the whole series.
Oh yeah,
I didn't actually notice that all that much. I'd have to go back and rewatch to look out for it.
Yeah, that's
I
the thing about
recognized
Kira.
him.
He's supposed to be so like he wants a quiet life, as he keeps saying, so he blends into the background so well, and it's a nice little setup to him.
Yeah, I recognized him though whenever he popped up, mainly because of all the memes about him on
That's
the internet.
fair. I suppose if you know he's the serial killer going into this, it's pretty obvious.
Before I knew his character, I already knew, oh, this guy's Kira and this is what he looks like. Okay. And he has a weird obsession with hands.
That's fair. I had not seen any of the Kira memes ahead of time, so I wasn't super aware of who the character of Kira was ahead of time, so I wasn't looking out for him as he came through.
Yeah, and ultimately, the story, it's, again, a bunch of tiny vignettes that kind of focus around these whole concepts. Though, I will say the story does come a lot more focused, especially in the back half, with the focusing on who the villain is. Whereas the first half is more so of finding the bow and arrow and trying to figure out who Red Hot Chili Pepper is. And they don't really do anything to further that because in the background, Jotaro's taking care of all the investigation stuff, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're following Josuke while Jotaro is doing a whole bunch of stuff in the background. So we don't see everything that's fucking happening. Whereas in the second half where we're actually like hunting down Kira, it's a lot more kind of focused.
Yeah.
Feels.
Like in Stardust Crusaders, sure, it jumped around all over the place, but it was going from one place to their destination, and each enemy they fought, or each stand user they encountered, was a specific henchman to the main villain. Whereas this one, I liked how it was grounded in just the one place. It made, I guess, you become more familiar with the place as each episode comes out.
Yeah, you get the little segments of like, oh, this is the little hotspot that's, rumored because of this incident, and it's the people of the town, and, stand users being drawn to each other.
Yeah, but then all of the different stand users that pop up, they, just because they weren't connected to like the main villain as they were back in Stardust Crusaders, where they were all just kind of working for him, you never quite knew whether they were an actual villain or just some person doing their thing in their life. You never knew how much of a threat they actually were or how important they were to the story.
That's another thing I kind of liked about this one, though, where like they're not constantly running into people who are working for the main bad. It's just they're running into people who live in the same city, and some of them are just fucking shitty people and have nothing to do with what they're actually dealing with.
Oh yeah, as a world-building device, I do enjoy that a lot, because, hey, now there's these people, some of them, who don't even want to fight, who have stands.
Yeah, and ultimately, the thing that kind of kicks off this story is it's more so wrapping up some like loose ends from the whole Dio incident in Stardust Crusaders of, okay, he got stand powers, but where did these stand powers really come from? And that kind of addresses it like, oh, there was these bow and arrows, and Dio gave one to Okasu's father, and then another one was given to Kira's family.
Yeah, and I will say right now, before we get much further, because of how, I guess, I viewed this series, I watched the first probably 3/4 of the series at ×2 speed, because I'm not really a fan of the pacing that they use and how slow they go through scenes.
That's fair.
But then once it started to focus onto the Kira aspect, I found myself forgetting to change the speed and focusing more on the story, because it became more interesting when like the whole Kira arc started to develop.
Oh, definitely. Like Kira might be one of the best things about this arc, just like how interesting of a character in the whole cat and mouse game is.
Yeah, I actually found Kira kind of super interesting to watch as the story kind of developed.
So, with kind of grounding the rules for stands in this world, was there anything that you guys found interesting about this, such as like new aspects to it or rules that you didn't expect? Especially considering what happened in the previous arc?
Yeah, there's one point towards the end of the series, or end of the season, where they encounter some stand user who it was one of the first stand users that they encountered who couldn't even control their stand. The dude who was living in the like the power line tower.
Oh yeah, Superfly.
Yeah, Superfly.
Yep.
And how he was trapped there by his own stand. He couldn't even leave until someone else came in to take his place.
Yeah, his stand literally became
to do was get away.
Literally a cage for whoever was there. There is a few other ones that kind of work independently like that too, though. I can't remember the guy's name, but Cheap Trick. That's the one that if you stare at someone's back, it kills you and then transfers.
Oh, right, yes.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's another example of a stand that is kind of independent from its user.
Yeah, there's a couple of stands that didn't seem like they were the most fun thing to have.
No. And that's not to say that other stands that did have controlling aspects weren't independent in their own sense. Red Hot Chili Pepper actually is independent from the user but listens to him, as we find out, where it's not the stand user but actually the stand itself that's doing all these interactions with the characters, and then it's kind of communicating for the master.
Yeah.
Or Echoes, which is one of the greatest things.
Echoes was actually super fucking cool to see how it worked. And like how it developed and got like almost like Super Saiyan forms, where it just got more powerful as the season went on because there was more things they needed it to be able to do.
Yeah, it starts off as just kind of like it makes sounds into like it makes sounds reality.
Yeah.
Then its third form is I make things heavier.
Now, to be fair, this didn't do really a good job of explaining it, I find, in the anime as opposed to the manga. Its ability isn't specifically making things heavier. It's able to rearrange the letters on things to make it mean different things and apply effects.
Sure.
Okay.
It doesn't get used well, I'll admit that fully, but the actual power that Echoes 3 has is specifically that it can take words and stuff and rearrange them. So think of it how it was able to make sounds before. Well, it's able to influence those words of the sounds to then change the aspects, and that's how he's able to make things heavy.
And another issue I had with one particular stand was probably one of my favorite characters in this season, Rohan Kishibe, the manga artist.
Yeah.
The guy who could go into books?
Yes. Well,
he makes you a book.
Yeah.
When he first introduces his stand, he says that in order to activate it, you have to see his manuscript. Because that's how he traps Koichi and the other kid with his stand at first. They look at his manuscript and they are compatible with it, as he said. But then afterwards, after that little 2-episode arc introducing him, that rule just completely flew out the window.
Well, it wasn't so much of them getting rid of the rule. Another big thing that's introduced in this arc is the fact that stands grow with the person. And Rohan, as a character, actually grew as a person after that interaction, which allowed his stand to take a new form. Kind of in the same way that Koichi's stand also evolves. Yeah. Just his was more so it grew more powerful because his energy and personality became more better, I guess is the best way to put it.
It's just, in Rohan's case, they never actually mentioned that growth. Yeah.
Well, he just kind of says it in passing and not so much it's a big thing.
Yeah, and to be fair, we kind of already got a little bit of a stands can grow more powerful over time vibe from Stardust Crusaders, because the main characters of that one, because we saw them so much, we saw their stands develop over time and start to do more and more impressive things.
Yeah.
It's just, this is the first time we're seeing it happen with side characters, and told that it's explicitly a part of stands is over time. If you develop mentally, essentially, your stand becomes more powerful. So this was essentially just putting in writing what was an unwritten rule beforehand.
Yeah. And I do like how the villains were all trying to plan around Jotaro's stand, because we can't deal with him. He stops time.
Oh yeah, we heard from a guy that he can stop time. That's not the kind of shit we want to deal with.
It's definitely a fun aspect of this. It's like just acknowledging that, yeah, I guess Dio and Jotaro really have a really broken stand power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also enjoy how like they started off this season with the like fight between Jotaro and Josuke. And Jotaro, like after the fight's like, all right, so I managed to stop time for like 2 seconds. That's not bad. Good thing I am still able to do it after all this time. It's just like, all right, so yeah, he still has the ability, but he's definitely out of practice, which is why not every problem's just solved with that instantaneously.
Yeah, and definitely the thing to say with it is Jotaro isn't at what he was at the end of Stardust. Like at the end of Stardust, they were like battle hardened because of the journey they went on together. But he's been living a good life. He actually, it mentions he's going to university for marine biology.
Yes.
The other thing I love about Jotaro is that he still has the hair hat, but now his hat is white, but it still blends perfectly into his black hair, and it's just...
Yep.
That's something I have questions about, but I don't know if you have answers, Keith.
Yeah. So when we're talking about this too, like I take notes as I watch through these series again, like revisiting them while we're getting ready to talk about the podcast. And I noted multiple times as, no, seriously, what the fuck is with Jotaro's hair?
I could kind of accept it in fucking Stardust Crusaders because it was the same color, so clearly there was just a part where the hat ended and the hair began, and I just chose to accept that fact. But now, watching it happen with a white hat, I have so many more questions than I used to.
Oh, I agree. If it was just a situation where, there was a hole in the back of the hat and his hair's coming through, that's fine. But no, it fucking blends together.
Yeah. Even like, I was kind of half hoping that in the first episode when fucking Josuke punches Jotaro and like reforms his hat, that was just going to be an excuse for the hat not to be a part of it anymore since it looks so weird, but nope. That's not what happens. You keep seeing that fucking hat.
Maybe the hat actually fused with his hair at that time.
I suppose that's more believable than any other explanation I can think of.
So another actually interesting thing to talk about with the stand itself. What did you guys think about the idea of being pierced by the arrow more than once? Also evolves the stand, not just mental growth.
That was intriguing, and it started to get me thinking that the arrow itself is, well, since it creates stands, it's probably safe to consider the idea that it is the progenitor of stands. Maybe it's a stand itself, and its power is to give stands, and it's probably sentient in its own mind.
Oh yeah, it definitely has some sort of sentience to it itself.
Maybe, but at the same time, the way they explain the bow and arrow isn't so much that it creates stands, it's more so it pulls the power of creating stands out of people, so these are people who had the inherent ability to make stands already, and it just awakens that ability inside them.
And the reason that's actually explained in Stardust Crusaders, where it's explained that Abdul actually got his powers before this whole thing happened, just naturally.
Yeah, it's similar to how other people like fucking Holly, when they try and force the or not Holly, whatever is Jotaro's mother's name's Holly?
Yeah, it's Holly.
Regardless, whatever. Jotaro's mom.
Yeah, Jotaro's mom is Holly.
She kind of has stand powers forced onto her, but because she doesn't naturally have the ability to produce stands, that's why it starts kind of taking over her body. So, yeah.
And
I imagine that's.
They even said with the arrow that if someone who wasn't worthy of a stand got shot, they would just die.
Yeah, so I imagine that's kind of what that means. Is it's not that they're like directly outright killed. It could be a similar situation to what happened with Holly, where a stand develops, but their body's incapable of supporting that.
Yeah, I will say with the arrow, the one thing that it's always bugged me, and it's never really answered, is the whole concept of if they're if they're hit with the arrow and they die, that means they didn't have a good stand power. That like there's no compatibility with it. But do they really have to die? I mean, has anybody ever tried just kind of pricking them with the arrow, or like stabbing them in the leg or something?
It's probably more along the lines of how the stand affected Holly, in that the person just has no way of.
I mean, to be fair, we don't know. We don't know for sure because everyone we see get shot with the arrow, it's through the fucking back of their skull.
Yeah, it's the head or the head, the neck, or the chest where the heart is.
Yeah. So we don't see anyone who, if it was a normal arrow, they would survive the shot regardless of whether or not they developed a stand.
That's fair.
But yes, I do assume that if they hit them in a way that they would normally survive, the stand ends up killing them since they can't support a stand.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt had a good idea with that. And it could be something simple as we also kind of find out specifically from when Kira gets hit the second time by the arrow that the stands not just are manifesting their mental power and like their personality into a physical form, but also takes into account what they need to survive. So it could be a situation where the arrow actually only works if it's a lethal attack.
Yeah, that does kind of make sense. Yeah, which would explain why they explicitly go for like head, neck, and chest shots, is because of the fact that they know it needs to be lethal in order to awaken the power if it can.
Yeah, but also when Kira's father was carrying the arrow around looking for people to turn into allies, he wasn't just randomly finding and trying the arrow on people. He was letting the arrow guide him to people who were able to use stands.
Oh yeah, I definitely think the arrow had some level of sentience. I just wanted to clarify that it's not creating stand powers, it's awakening stand powers inside people who already had that ability.
Yep. So another interesting thing to talk about, I guess, is what are your guys' thoughts on Crazy Diamond?
That's Josuke's stand, right? I don't have all the names.
Yeah, that's Josuke's stand.
I thought that was actually a really fucking cool power. The ability of everything that stand touches, he can like break down and remold in his own interests. In particular, I really like the way he beats what's the Najimi's Keicho Nijimura. That's his name. The way he defeats him and Bad Company by allowing himself to get hit by rockets, but reforming the rockets to shoot back at fucking Nijimura. Like, he uses a lot of really clever ways of breaking down and recreating shit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I literally don't catch when he's doing something the first time through. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even think of that. And the villain's like, oh, shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah. It's the kind of power who, when you first hear about it, you don't think it's super powerful, but the ways in which he uses it, you're like, wow, that's actually really fucking impressive.
Now, for me, it was a cool power and all, but just completely removed any sense of urgency from any scene that he was in.
Yeah, the fact that he was able to bring people back to life with that power.
Or not back to life, but heal them, because...
Oh yeah, sorry, he can't bring them back once they're dead. But if people like fucking when Koichi was on like death's door, not dead, but dying, and he was able to like fully bring him back.
Yeah.
Well, that's more of it's a different type of tension where it's not so much they can't be saved or anyone can die. It's if he doesn't, like, he has to get to them within a certain time frame. Yeah. So it's a direness.
And the fact that he can't use the power on himself means that you end up with situations where other people end up targeting him specifically because of the fact that they know he can heal the others.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say it doesn't fully remove all of the threat, especially with some of the stands they have to fight, but it does. The risk of death is actually a lot lower compared to other arcs.
Yeah.
In fact, for an example of some of the interesting ways that he ends up using that one as well, the first fight actually, where he swallows the glove.
Oh yeah, or even when he punches his mother through the chest with like the broken glass and then catches the stand in the glass. Yeah, his fight against that first serial killer,
Angelo,
is like, Angelo is a lot of him. Kind of showing off the cool things he can do with his stand.
Yeah.
But yes, the glove that he swallows to catch him in his mouth is another very cool example of that.
Yeah, that's also an example of Angelo targeting him specifically because he knows that he can heal any wound.
Yeah.
And I think the way that Josuke thinks about fights really just highlights the fact that he is Joseph's son.
Yeah. He's not like fucking super powerful physically. He's very smart when it comes to fights and knows how to kind of think tactically to turn situations to his advantage.
So mentioning the fact that he is Joseph's son, what did you guys think of Old Man Joseph?
Odd, to say the least.
Yeah, his character develops in weird ways every time he comes back for a new season. The amount of money he fucking spent on the fucking invisible baby that he adopted, He's a silly one.
And to be fair, you didn't know the correct translation of US dollars to yen.
Fair.
Yeah, there was next to no reason for him to actually show up, other than he wanted to be there to help, despite how old he was.
Yeah, I believe the whole issue was because he has Purple Hermit, which can locate anyone, but due
Yeah.
to the nature of how many stand users were in Morio, he had to be there physically for it to work accurately.
Yeah, there was too much interference if he tried to do it from a far way away.
Yeah. But even still, they didn't even rely on his power to locate stand users. They relied on the fact that stand users are just naturally drawn to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of the fact that we don't need to find them, we just need to exist, and we will run into them eventually.
Yeah, and you mentioned too the Invisible Baby, which ends up becoming a Shizuka Joestar.
Yeah.
Kind of figured as much when at the end it was shown with the old JoJo leaving with the invisible child.
Yep. Also, what do you guys think of Josuke? Josuke stealing his money at the end.
That was kind of funny.
That was pretty fucking funny.
He's a good kid. Takes his wallet.
It's like, oh yeah, that photo? Yeah, I decided I want it back.
That's the thing, like, Josuke's just so good at hitting you with the unexpected, I find, in this one compared to a lot of other JoJo's, where you... For example, Joseph establishes so early on that he is like, oh, I knew what you were thinking, but never explains it, so it's just kind of like a magical power he has almost. Whereas Josuke kind of explains his thinking on things, but that just makes it something you kind of forget at the same time and get surprised by it in interesting ways.
But
Yeah.
whereas for me, outside of a couple instances, mainly where he was first using his stance power, and a couple instances like using broken glass and dried blood to attack Kira.
Yeah, the Kira ones were really cool.
Yeah, but aside from those, I was able to successfully guess what he was going to do in any situation. Just because, like, when you take into consideration his stand's power and the things around him, it logically made sense at the time.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's a little bit of a...
It's like
Look at me, I'm so cool, I can predict the future, but... Yeah, I
like
guess you are
in
cool
the,
and can't predict the future.
in the power line tower thing, where the guy was using his stand to shoot parts of the steel beams at Josuke. I was like, oh, well, Josuke is hitting them, so he's going to just send them right back at him.
So did you guys end up having a favorite, I guess, arc specifically, or even like a stand storyline?
My favorite stand, definitely Rohan's, but my favorite arc is the Kira arc.
Which one? The Finding Kira one, or the Who is Kira Now one?
The Who is Kira Now?
Okay, so the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the two Kira arcs is the one where they know there's a serial killer, but they're trying to find out who the killer is, which ultimately ends with the fight outside the tailor shop. And then the second part is, okay, whose body is he in?
I was a fan of the Who's Kira arc just because I wasn't sure who Kira was, so it felt a lot like a mystery where I was trying to piece it together before the fucking characters in the show. As for favorite stand, I actually really enjoyed the way Echoes worked, so Echoes would probably be my favorite stand. Even though it was a little bit fucking weird and wonky.
Yeah, Echoes is definitely one of the much more elaborate stands, which in a sense, I guess, makes it a little harder to say it wasn't your favorite.
Yeah. That being said, I also really enjoyed Bad Company, just like from how fucking full of himself Nijimura was because of the fact that he had Bad Company and impenetrable defense, and how it wasn't even like a multi-episode him getting defeated. He was just fucking dunked on immediately after all that confidence. Granted, that's pretty standard for JoJo enemies of them being overconfident, but it was pretty fun to watch it happen to Nijimura with Bad Company. Because it does seem like something that is pretty fucking powerful if you think about it.
Okuyasu's stand
The
is
hand?
pretty cool too. Yeah, the
Oh,
hand.
yeah.
But I'm kind of upset that he never got to use his stand all that much through the series.
That's true, but he did like when he did use it, he had some really cool moments, like his fight with Red Hot Chili Pepper on the bike,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even when he shows up at the end of the Kira fight and is able to just take out the bubbles, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, his was one of those ones where early on it seemed like it was very OP, and I was kind of worried that he was going to become the JoBro, because when he becomes the JoBro, having someone that powerful on your team is going to be kind of ridiculous, just because of the fact that, like, not only can he erase away physical objects, but the space between things. It's just like, that's insanely fucking powerful if you think about it.
But you see, they balanced him in one very clear way. He's not
'Cause
very
he
smart.
can't think about it.
He's very stupid, yes.
I love how he just fully admits it too. Like after every fight where something bad happens, like goes through, always like, I'll admit I'm not very smart.
Like the
Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Pepper climax. It's like, how did you know I was the bad guy? I was actually gonna hit both of you.
Yeah.
Just turns out that I hit the right one first.
Oh, fuck. Okuyasu is pretty great. He's a very fun character because of his fucking stupidity.
Oh, he's definitely a fun character. The thing that is with him though is for a lot of people in like the JoJo fandom, he's a very like mixed JoBro, where people either seem to love him or hate him, and there's not really a middle ground on him, oddly enough.
That's fair. I was on the side where I love him. I don't know. I'm not going to say how that affects my rankings of him for JoBro, but he was very enjoyable for me to watch. I'll put it that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, he's not high on my tier list for Joe Bros. But he was enjoyable to a degree. A lot more so than Koichi.
And I guess this kind of works too, where we're talking about them introducing new stand things and kind of the rules, but they also introduced something new into the JoJo universe now, and that is ghosts.
Yep. The undead is a thing in the form of ghosts.
How did you guys feel about this?
To be fair, we already dealt with fucking vampires and zombies in the fucking Phantom Blood, so...
If they have the supernatural things like the stands, then I'm fine with other supernatural things, like ghosts, being a thing.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about this, too, is it wasn't like an overbearing thing. Like, it did play a big part, because ultimately, Rainey is kind of like, I guess, the driving force for the Kira arc, specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she does play a big part, but it's not an overbearing part that does a lot. It's kind of like, it sets up defeating, I guess, one stand, and then we get the great payoff at the end when Kira's defeated, where she's the one who actually finishes him off.
Yeah. You know, I definitely enjoyed, like, it didn't feel like an overbearing, this completely shatters my perception of the world. It was more so, this fits with what I understand of the world already, and the way they use it is interesting enough that I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, and it also kind of fully is like, oh, well, guess what? We've had vampires and zombies before, so we had a baseline for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was no big jump to bring them into the series. Wasn't even really a little jump.
It was like a step.
Yes.
A step in the wrong direction.
Step in the
JoJo's trash now.
Oh, no.
What do you mean now?
Fair. It's always been trash.
Actually, more of a question just for my own thought process to you guys. Do you guys have the Morio radio thing stuck in your head now?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that did not take long for it to happen to me.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, I think Stardust Crusader had some really good musical cues, but Diamond's Unbreakable, I can't think of like a bad song in it.
I mean, even the fucking opener is just a fucking bop.
Which one? There's three of them.
The first one. The silly, crazy, funky town or whatever it fucking was.
They all sound kind of demonic at times too, speed, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I got a very Jet Set Radio vibe from just the sound setup.
Not just the sound, but also like the hyper saturation of the colors in it as well. I definitely got a bit of a Jet Set Radio vibe from it. If
Yeah.
it was just done with cell shading art style, then it would have been 100% a Jet Set Radio anime.
Yeah, I think it could be just the other JoJo's up to this point, at least in the anime side of things, looked very much older in their style, whereas this one
Older,
kind of
and
like,
they had a more gritty kind of color palette.
yeah, where this one is definitely, it pops a lot more. And
Yeah,
honestly, this is more of it getting into Araki's eye for art, I guess, is the best way to put it, because Araki loves to use like very interesting color palettes and things just pop out. And I think this is kind of like where he really got the hand on what he was doing.
yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a very beautiful show. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Crazy Noisy Bizarre Town is the opening.
Crazy Noisy Bizarre Town. That's what it was.
Chase is the second song, which actually is probably my favorite of the three. And then Great Days is the one where, again, the final opening theme of each JoJo since the Stardust Crusaders hints at the final character's power, or at least showcases it during the opening. And we got the cool one of everything going in reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how did you guys feel about Kira starting off with 2 stand powers?
It seemed a little, well, at first it seems a little overpowered, but then you remember Dio and Jotaro's stands.
But then we remember people
they're-
stop fucking time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of need to give him multiple fucking powers to balance the scales a little bit and what's going on.
But even still, the stopping time, it's more because their senses are so heightened and the reflexes of their stands are so powerful. It's more like they're moving at an accelerated rate compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just how more I kind of pictured how their stands worked.
Yeah, I guess ultimately the idea is that they're like precision speed-based stands, both of those.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ultimate
So
point of that is time
the
freezing.
the effect is frozen time.
And it kind of builds up to that where as they develop, they get faster and faster and faster, and the kind of infinite limit of getting faster and faster is moving without time passing.
Yeah. And Kira's stand, when you think about it, it has all of the traits it needs for exactly what Kira needed to keep living and blending in and not standing out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea we end up getting of stands aren't just cool powers that someone gets, it's a reflection of their needs and their personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his
It
first
gave
one
him-
is anything he touches becomes a bomb, which is quite simple, but surprisingly a lot more effective than you'd think.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the bites the dust, which has no weaknesses. Has weaknesses. Is a heat-seeking bomb.
Of course. With
Yes.
no weaknesses. Other than the weaknesses it has.
Also, some of the Josuke stuff is cool, but man, Koichi, like when he has his like click-on moments, they're just the greatest things in this series.
Yeah, but then he has his moments where he's like the worst. Like when they first encounter Kira or track him down by his jacket button, and Jotaro is all, no, our top priority is getting out of here alive because he doesn't want to be found. He is going to try to kill us with everything he can. But meanwhile, Koichi's just there, like, oh no, Jotaro thinks I'm not up to the task. I'm going to go against what this guy is planning and put both of us in danger to see if I can stop him.
To be fair, though, he has his click-on moment after that when he has to solve the problem that he created, and that's how he ends up growing into developing Act 3.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that Jotaro also says that Koichi is a very reliable person.
Yeah, but also, like, Jotaro told him, like, 10 times in that scene. So, like, don't go after him. We're getting out of here. Put all of your focus on getting out of here safely. And every time, Koichi's just like, yeah, no.
Koichi's also the center of my least favorite episode of this entire fucking season, which is The one where he first developed echoes and they have to fight against the fucking con artist who has the lock power.
Yeah.
It seems like every one of these goddamn seasons has the episode where one of the good guys realizes that there's an evil character who takes advantage of them by convincing everyone else that he's a good guy, and no one fucking believes him. Like, it was the fucking baby in Stardust Crusaders, the fucking first episode of not Battle Tendencies, Phantom Blood, when fucking goddamn Dio kills the dog and everyone thinks Dio's a good guy and Joseph's a shithead. Or Jonathan, not Joseph. It's just...
Yeah, because Joseph is a shithead.
Yeah, Joseph is a shithead. Jonathan's actually a good person who just got fucked over. But yeah, every one of these fucking seasons has the one episode where there's the bad guy who gets away with being bad because everyone thinks they're a good person. And it's just my least favorite fucking thing. And we, of course, get it in this. And it's a fucking con artist who convinces fucking Koichi's mom to sell him the deed to her home because Koichi accidentally stole his wallet, which is just some bullshit.
Yeah, the family thing is a little excessive, but I love the fact that they do kind of subvert that when you think it's going to be Josuke and Okisu that's going to be tricked by it, but they immediately catch on.
Yeah, that's a fake tooth. Yeah. Also, this isn't a cat, it's a stuffed animal with a blood pack in the bag, yeah.
And we kind of also get a playoff of that one, too, where the episode later, Rohan has Cheap Trick on his back, and Koichi's like, oh, you're just messing with me, and then he comes back, he's like, I kind of knew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I do want to speak about one of my favorite episodes in this one. Actually, we have to do something else first before we get to this episode. So, really important question: is he an alien or a stand user?
Just by how bizarre he is, I've got to say alien.
Yeah, I gotta side with Matt. He definitely seems like more of an alien.
Yeah,
because like the Arrow found him as someone who would be suitable to have or use a stand.
Yeah.
But it couldn't even penetrate his skin.
Yeah. Yeah, Mikitaka is... that's a debate that I feel like will live on in the storyline forever, because we never get that answered, in any capacity.
Of course not. Why would we get that answer?
But we have enough stuff on either end where we could arguably say he could be either one.
Oh, yeah.
But we never see the spaceship.
Never see the spaceship, never see the gravity gun. But no, he just seems too honest and open of a character.
Yeah, especially for fucking the world that JoJo's built, having someone that fucking forthright is not human.
Yeah.
Especially where he has so many like stand-like powers without like actually having a fucking stand.
Well, to be fair, stands don't always have to have physical manifestations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only two abilities he has that we know of are like his really tough skin and his shapeshifting.
Yeah.
Which are, I don't know if you know this, Matt, not skills that humans have.
Yeah, I know.
Could be a powerful stand user, though.
Could be a powerful stand user, which I'd be willing to believe if it weren't for the fact that he's clearly an alien.
And the reason I wanted to ask this question first is because I want to talk about one of my personal favorite storylines, the Josuke versus Rohan gambling game.
I felt so bad for Rohan in that.
I just love the whole concept of like they're playing the dice game, but like clearly Mikitaka doesn't get it, so he keeps giving like perfect hands for the situation.
Yep.
And then Rohan's like, I'm gonna find out. I know you're cheating, and you have to cheat on this last hand. And then he fucking stabs his own finger. Now we have stakes, Josuke.
And he was right. Now they had stakes.
No.
Yeah, just like when Rohan goes off the deep end is just some of the best scenes in the series. And I love just like the kind of like joke ending of this one where it's like all the fire trucks are showing up. And it's like, oh no, this is gonna like, ruin the whole thing because they're gonna find that that's the alien stand user inside the dice. And of course, a normal person would say, oh, why are fire trucks showing up at this exact moment? It's like, oh no, Rohan, your house is on fire.
Oh yeah.
And I did like how that wasn't just a one-off gag for that arc, but the fact that his house did catch fire and suffer fire damage played a key factor in progressing his side of the story.
Yeah, that's why Cheap Trick shows up to fight him.
Well, that's why, yeah, he gets Cheap Trick on his back.
Also, the fact that Rohan can't just leave it alone with the guy's like, please don't look at my back, so he traps him in his floor.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you know this, but Rohan is actually, I don't know if it's came out yet, but he is getting a spin-off series.
I have heard that news. I was looking into Rohan a bit after they finished the series, and I saw a bit about him getting a spin-off series.
Interesting.
So if you definitely do like the character, but like the series was just felt a little off for you, that might be a way to get back into the world, specifically for this arc of JoJo.
It's certainly something I'm going to have to look into.
Because I think that's the benefit of this arc in particular compared to other arcs, where it is so open-ended and it's more about the city than the characters. You could spin off this part of JoJo specifically into so many different things.
Yeah, like, so many different characters could have their own fucking storyline just written about them. And then you set the entire fucking Rohan story in a different city, and then you have a spin-off about that city, and then you get so many more spin-offs to do.
I like how the final episode of the season ended off, and they're like, what, Rohan was caught for shoplifting? We gotta go see this.
He's definitely the person who would. He's so goddamn weird.
Yeah. Got too obsessed about something he saw.
But I love how, like,
Or other.
the characters like all feel like they're real people in a sense too. Like nothing feels like aside from like Mikitaka, I guess, nothing feels like absurdly over the top to the point like the highway star fight.
Yeah.
Where Rohan like makes the choice of like, oh, Josuke, get out of here. He's gonna kill you if you step in the room. And then Josuke's like, oh, you think I'm gonna do what you tell me to?
Yeah.
And then it looks like they're gonna have that heart to heart at the end where it's like, oh, I guess we're friends now. But Rohan's like, fuck you, Josuke. How dare you not do what I say?
I was like, this is why I hate you.
So I think the only thing I have personally left to talk about would be the final Kira fight.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or I guess I should say the specifics of like that final cycle of days, I guess, with... So how did you guys feel about the Bites the Dust time loop?
I enjoyed it. It makes me really nervous that every fucking season of JoJo is now going to end with the final villain having fucking time fucky powers.
It seemed, yeah, like it was an interesting concept, but it seemed way out there. Like a bomb that destroys time, in a sense.
Well, that's fair.
Send time back.
Although I would also say, like, this seemed like the most scary villain stand power to date because of the fact that he could win without anyone ever knowing.
Yeah.
As we saw with Rohan dying 3 fucking times.
Even without him knowing, really.
Yeah, because only the person who has Bites the Dust would know. But, man, Hayato, MVP of those last few episodes.
Yep. He put everything together, and then got killed and brought back. Somehow.
Yeah. He fucking finds out who Kira is and then fucking just runs it down after that, essentially.
He was speed running the final day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, well, he does die, because he does get killed by Kira, and then because Kira's power works a certain way, he needed Hayato to be alive to not be found out, and I'm not sure the method of that, and I don't think Araki knows either, so that's why we kind of skip over that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then Josuke ends up bringing him back, because he does explain it right there. It's like, he healed him at the exact moment of explosion, so he didn't actually die.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's a bomb set to detonate when those specific key phrases are mentioned, and whoever mentions them are killed, and then Hayato is like killed, triggering the time destruction.
Yeah, effectively how it works is that Bites the Dust, it blows up on specific rules, and what it does is with this loop, everything that happens at a certain time is always going to happen with this loop. That's why Hayato's face still opens up like a book at certain times and all that.
Yeah.
So as long as it's active, everything will happen. That's kind of how he wins, so he has to deactivate it after everything's already happened to make it permanent. which is also the loophole of how the characters get out of all of them dying because of Hayato's plan.
Yeah, and it's also the thing where once someone is blown up and then time sent backwards, they're like destined to blow up at that time again.
Yeah, so it's not Killer Queen blowing them up again, it's them just blowing up because they blew up in one loop.
Yeah, and now they're destined to fucking blow up. But it also means that because they're destined to die to blowing up, Killer Queen will prevent them from dying from any other means than them blowing up, which is why he prevents Hayato from killing himself at some point. It's a fucking weird power.
So the reason that Killer Queen protects Hayato is not to prevent that. It's more so that Killer Queen is supposed to protect Hayato from everything. That's why there's, if you might have noticed, the scene where Kira's actually going to beat the shit out of Hayato, and then Killer Queen actually stops him.
Right, yeah.
It's protecting the person that is the bomb, and Hayato's the bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the backfire to that whole plan is the fact that he can only have one bomb active at a time. So in order to make another bomb, he has to deactivate that first.
I mean, you got to make it somewhat fair for the users to get out of it.
Yeah. The other part is that, Killer Queen will aggressively protect the person who the bomb is planted in. So, the fact that he couldn't even kick the shit out of Hayato because of the fact that Killer Queen was protecting him. Yeah, there needed to be some balancing mechanics put into it. Otherwise, it was I win, you lose situation.
Yeah, because if he could have used it any other way, he would have just put bites the dust in himself, use it as normal, and then anytime someone gets close to him, I'm in your left eye, boom.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's the fun situation where they all come face to face with him. Okiyasu also has his near-death experience because he's dead, but then he's not because he decided I'm too stupid to die.
Yeah.
Mind you, it was a good moment.
Yeah.
It was a little touching.
I enjoyed it.
Did you guys think that Kira won there in the fake-out at the end, though?
I definitely had a moment of realizing it before realizing he was dead.
I kind of figured that he failed. I assumed when he first triggered his ability where he thought he was going back in time, I assumed that just because of how events unfolded, it didn't activate properly, and so he wasn't destroying time to go back, it was destroying himself or something.
Yeah, effectively what ended up happening was Koichi made his hand heavy, and then Jotaro got close enough to beat the shit out of his hand so he couldn't trigger the bomb, and then stupid ambulance driver backed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, as mentioned before, we get the really cool scene of him getting the shit beat out of him by the Ghost Street.
It was
that was fucking horrifying, to be honest.
I've heard of this Ghost Street, and you think you're gonna get me with this? Think again. It's you think you've got me? I've had 15 years to plan this. You're not getting away.
The thing I love the most about the Ghost Street situation is when Koichi and Rohan are there for the first time, and they're going out, and then Koichi hears from behind, it's okay to turn around, and he's like, okay, fine, and he looks, but then the way out of it is Rohan just writes, it's he didn't look.
Yeah.
He writes in, oh, you can't look.
Yeah.
It's literally, you cannot see things.
You see, it works, it counts, it counts, it never happened.
He didn't look because he couldn't look.
It's okay, we're out, I'll give you your vision back. There, now you can see things again.
It was just one of those what the fuck moments that I couldn't help but just laugh hard at when it happened.
Yeah.
Not because the slapstick comedy, but the fact that his stand works in that way.
Yeah.
His stand, as long as he's able to activate it on someone, it can essentially be the most powerful stand.
Yeah.
Because if he can activate it on someone, out of a few specific scenarios, he can make it so they can't attack him. Ever.
Yeah. Kind of. Because it depends on the definition of attack, because as we got with Boys to Men, the rock, paper, scissors guy.
Yeah, but that was also because he'd already absorbed part of Rohan's stand power.
Oh yeah, but before the rock, paper, scissors game happened, he wrote that he couldn't attack him, but it wasn't that he was actively attacking Rohan, it was that he was playing a rock, paper, scissors game that happened to have a gambling aspect to it. So that's that's where the weakness of it is if Rohan doesn't word it in the right way, it can be worked around.
Yeah.
So before we get into the last part where we start talking about our favorite stuff, or specifically our rankings, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that is the person who saved Josuke when he was younger.
I think it was Josuke.
So have you guys looked into this at all?
Nope.
I haven't.
Okay. So as the story unfolds, it was just a random guy. That's how it turns out. It was never revealed to be Josuke, though people did suspect it was going to be Josuke and there was going to be some time fuckery.
Yeah.
So this is something you're probably going to start noticing in JoJo stuff moving forward, is that Araki does set up things that he thinks are interesting, but based on how the story goes, he won't follow through on it. And the original plan from the sound of it was supposed to be Josuke who saves himself and inspires himself in a sense due to the fight with Kira.
Yeah.
But then he realized that there was a lot of like loopholes he'd have to jump through and he wouldn't be able to tell the story the way he wanted for that payoff. So ultimately it was defaulted to that it just happened to be a guy that saved Josuke when he was younger, and he's nothing more than the inspiration for Josuke of being a hero.
Yes,
Yeah.
and incidentally, because of the planning, has the same voice.
Josuke is really thorough about imitating this man. But what I can confirm is that nothing's ever suggested otherwise to what happened there. As of the story going as it is, you could still theorize that it was Josuke because he does confirm it either way. But kind of the accepted canon is that it's just a random guy. But honestly, you could believe in either way and just assume that Josuke on an off-scene story saves him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until some point where we get a spin-off in this town of Josuke and time shenanigans.
Well, my favorite part about that is it creates the looping logic that time travel fuckery always does, which is Josuke styles his hair after the man who saved his life. But the man who saved his life, if time travel is involved, is Josuke, which means Josuke is styling his hair after himself, which is where the fuck did the hairstyle come from in the first place then?
I mean, to be fair, at the time that it's supposed to be taking place, because it's during the Dio fight that happens, it's 88, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was the delinquent hairstyle of the time.
Oh yeah, I know. It's just the whole logic of it is that he's inspired to do it because of the person who saved him, and he saw the hairstyle that the person had. And it's just, if that is himself traveling back in time, not that the hairstyle came from nowhere, just the idea that he's inspired by himself, and the person who was inspired by him is inspired by it. To like make a reference to another thing,
it's essentially you're looking at a circle, a fully completed circle, and you're wondering where the original break is.
Yeah.
What's that British TV show about the people who develop superpowers after a comet passes by?
Misfits.
Misfits, thank you. So yeah, in Misfits, there's the time traveling thing, and like at the end of the 4th season, one of the main characters travels back in time because he has to do everything the exact way it happened the first time around as a separate character. But he talks about how he has to go back in time and he has to buy a power from the power broker. And he's like, but I don't have the money to do that if I go back in time. And the power broker's like, oh, I remember when I sold my first power, it was that power. And I've held on to the money that I was paid for the time I sold that first power. So I guess I could just give you that money since you're going to give it back to me soon anyways. And it's just like, where the fuck did that money come from then? If he was given it by the guy who he later goes back in time to give it to. It bugged me. But whatever.
Well, that's specifically why I held on to it the whole time. It's literally stuck in that time loop.
Yeah, that money does not exist outside of that time loop, which means it was never minted. Anyways, fuck it. That's all I'm trying to say. Sometimes when you do time travel shit, stuff stops making sense.
Yeah, that's the problem with time travel.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, we're ready to do the part that makes people on the internet angry at us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to getting people very mad.
Okay, so as always, we got the 4 categories where we're doing the rankings for. We have the JoJo, the JoBro, the villain, and the arc. Now, for this one, unlike the last one, it's easy again to identify who the JoBro is, and it is Okaisu.
Yep, absolutely. Shall we start with JoJo, since that seems like the most logical one to start with?
Sure. So I believe as of last standing, we all had Jotaro is our number 1 pick. So what is your guys' ranking now?
I still have Jotaro as my number 1 pick,
Mm-hmm.
but Josuke is now my second favorite JoJo.
Okay, and I have to ask, did your Joseph ranking go down because of old Joseph, or is Josuke just better?
Josuke is just better in my mind. I I won't deny that Joseph's behavior in this one didn't help, but personally, I think even if I ignored Joseph's participation in this season, I would still probably put Josuke ahead of him.
But he even said the line. He said, "Oh my god."
Yeah, that didn't help, Keith.
Now, I'm of the same mind as Peter, where Josuke is my number 2 and Jotaro is still my number 1. Joseph, he had his moment, and despite the fact that he made an appearance in this one, he was not the main JoJo to take into consideration, so all consideration of him is null and void for his appearance in this season.
Fair enough. So I guess that means we're all of agreement with JoJo's, because I also am the same way. Jotaro is my favorite JoJo still. Josuke is second, then Joseph, then Jonathan. And it just comes down to Josuke is definitely a more believable and like fun character that you can relate to. But if you're looking at like a hero character, it's Jotaro the whole way.
Oh yeah, Jotaro 100% of the way.
Okay, so next let's go into Joe Bros.
So of course, this is Okayasu.
Yep.
So to go back into talk a little bit about what my kind of justification was in previous ones, I kind of ranked them less so on how much I liked them and more so on how much they kind of assisted the Joestar family and their different branches down the line. So for me, fucking oh god, Speedwagon has always been my top ranked Jobro. Unfortunately, Speedwagon is still my top ranked Jobro, but even though Okayasu doesn't do much to actually help out the Joestar family, like, he's cool. The fact that he's so dumb and just fun to watch gave him huge bonus points in my book, so Okayasu is now my second favorite Jobro in the series.
And as for me, I've got to rank Okuyasu at the bottom, just because he's just there. He contributes next to nothing.
But he's so fun, man!
Yeah, but as a Joe Bro, he doesn't, in my mind, he doesn't fulfill the Joe Bro role.
He doesn't even die. Permanently, I guess.
That is an important role for Joe Bros to have. Is they have to fight the Joseph at the beginning, and they have to die against the main villain so that the others are inspired to win.
Okay, so if I'm correct, then that means both me and Matt still have Kakyoin as our number 1.
Yep.
And then Speedwagon is Peter's number 1.
Yep.
So just to make this simpler, because this is actually our most fucked up list of like no overlap really. Mine goes Kakyoin, Speedwagon, Okayasu, and then Caesar. Peter goes Speedwagon, Okayasu, Kakyoin, Caesar. And then finally we have Matt's for Kakyoin, Caesar, Speedwagon, Okayasu.
This is definitely the one where we have the most disagreement, and I think it's just because we all have different metrics by which we rank the Joe Bros.
That's fair. But, well, I mean, we have Kakyoin shared between me and Matt, and Speedwagon's in our top, I guess for 2 of us, top 2, and then 3 on Matt.
Yeah.
And next
and
is...
me and Keith both agree that Caesar's not great.
Yeah.
And Matt likes Caesar.
It was Bubbles! He used Bubbles!
That was what his fucking power was. Oh, God. Alright, so the villain. So let's talk about Kira.
Yeah, so Kira is definitely an interesting take on the villains up to this point, where all of them were kind of like world domination-esque, and Kira's just like, I just want to live a quiet life and murder to my heart's content.
Yeah.
Also collect my fucking toenails.
Yeah, that was a weird thing. What about you, Matt? Where did you rank Kira?
I rank him as my second place, just underneath Dio.
Yep, so yours now goes Dio, Kira, Cars, and then Dio Brando from Arc 1.
Yes. Because Kira is a very unsettling villain.
Oh, definitely.
I am close to you, but slightly different in that I go Dio Brando, then Cars, then Kira, because Kira definitely is powerful and a compelling villain, but the fact that he just kind of wants to have a quiet life to himself makes me feel like he's not a huge threat to the world as a whole. It's mostly just he's a threat to the people who want to fuck with him. And then
he's
his
a threat-
occasional
a threat to the people
bouts
who
with
want to
serial
mess
killer.
with him, and a threat to the people in the town in which he resides.
Yeah, but if you don't live inside Morio, then you don't really ever have to consider Kira's existence in the slightest.
Yeah.
Which is why he just doesn't rank super high for me, but I do think he is more terrifying than Dio Brando.
That's fair. Now, just to confirm, yours is Dio, Cars, Kira, and then Dio Brando.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So mine, I have Kira ranked number 1. And
Fair.
I would even argue that, like, on a one-on-one situation, like, the characters of the story to it, I think Kira is a bigger threat to the Diamond is Unbreakable group than Dio was to the Stardust Crusaders group. And
That's fair.
Like, by pure power. Like, I think Kira does have the potential of actually defeating Dio if they went head-to-head themselves.
Yeah, probably.
Just due to Bites the Dust is so fucking rigged.
Yeah, if he used Bites the Bust a little bit better,
Bites
the Dust. If he used Bites the Dust a little bit better, he easily would have won that entire throwdown.
I mean, in one of those loops, he actually killed pretty much all of them.
Yeah, if he knew everyone was dead, he could have just, like, took Hayato, like, off to the side. It's like, you're gonna stand here until we kill everybody.
Yeah.
The only reason he didn't win is because he didn't know. He knew that Hayato did about 3 to 4 loops, but he didn't know who he killed.
Yeah.
And
then that loop was broken before he could figure out by just the people dying because of fate's dictation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think out of all the villains so far, Kira was just the villain I wanted more of. Like, he was so interesting and unnerving. It's like, I just want to see more of this man doing things.
I can respect that.
Yeah, so mine is Kira, Dio Brando, and then Cars. Just Cars never clicked with me. He was never interesting.
That's fair. Cars was perhaps the least, like, compelling villain, but he was the villain who I could very easily see taking over the world if he had a little bit more time before his fucking run-in with Joseph.
That's fair.
So
he was like an ancient evil force.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think one-on-one matchups, if you were just to have the villains fight each other, I do think your ranking is probably the way it would go down, except I do think Cars would beat out Dio Brando.
Oh, definitely. I don't think Dio Brando wins most of these fights, but I found him more interesting than Cars.
That's fair.
It's the I throw away my humanity JoJo was just such a great scene alone.
Yes. Yeah, it's just none of us are ranking specifically on who's the most powerful in a one-on-one fight. We all have our different reasons for why we're ranking the villains the way we are.
Yeah.
Mine's just the right way to rank them, I guess. All right, and then the plot as a whole. So
the arcs, we have Phantom Blood, Battle Tendencies, Stardust Crusaders, and now Diamond is Unbreakable.
Yeah. So I believe when I was talking about this after we had talked about Stardust Crusaders, I was a little bit critical of Stardust Crusaders because it felt very Monster of the Weeky. In that, like, it was just they find a stand user, they fight the stand user. Next episode, they're somewhere else and they're fighting a different stand user that they happen to run into. This one had a similar situation going on, but the fact that it was all kind of interconnected in the same town and the fact that we were doing a lot of world building gave it a bit of a bump for me. So I still kind of prefer Battle Tendencies and Phantom Blood, but this one came above Stardust Crusaders in terms of plot for me.
That's fair. And I think the big difference there is that with Stardust Crusaders, where the party was didn't seem to be important at all. Like, it was completely forgettable. They could have been anywhere and it would have been the same. But Diamond is Unbreakable, it feels like the world's a lot more built up to, like, everything seems recognizable and different.
Yeah.
So that means Diamond Unbreakable is now your third choice after Battle Tendencies, Phantom Blood, and then Stardust in last?
Yeah.
I put Diamond is Unbreakable as my number one. I don't know if I mentioned it a lot throughout our episodes here, but I've been very clear to you guys that I am a big fan of Diamond is Unbreakable.
You have.
Yeah, and then Battle Tendencies
Very
is my
much
number
so.
2, with Stardust taking up third, and then Phantom Blood, unfortunately with being so short and straight to the point, is my last one.
Yeah.
I do believe I had Stardust Crusaders as my 1, correct?
You have Battle Tendencies listed as your number 1.
Oh, right. Battle Tendencies 1.
But you can change it up if you want. This can change completely if you rethink about things.
Actually, now that I think about it, the reason I had Phantom Blood ranked so highly was because of all the world building it did, and the fact that this one does just as much world building with regards to stands instead of just the Joestar family. I'm moving Diamond is Unbreakable above Phantom Blood for the arc.
So it becomes number 2, and then Phantom Blood is going to be your number 3.
Yeah, and Battle Tendencies is still my first.
That's right.
Yep, Battle Tendencies is still my first, and Diamond is Unbreakable is my second now.
So that means your Battle Tendencies, Diamond is Unbreakable, Stardust Crusaders, and then Phantom Blood. So that means we've all have, except for Peter, that is, have Phantom Blood down to the bottom.
Yeah. I just feel like Phantom Blood did a bit too much world building on the Joseph family to give it, or the Joestar family to give it that swift of a kick to the nerds.
That's fair. Yeah, it's Stardust Crusaders has a lot of good moments, but the big problem with Phantom Blood is like it just doesn't have a lot of memory. Like it does do the world building for the family, but unfortunately it is the first one, and it just doesn't have the benefits that the rest had.
Yeah.
And
That's the main reason I give it bonus points in the fucking plot department, is just because of the fact that other things get to be good because of the fact that they don't have to do any of the establishing that Phantom Blood is. So anytime I'm happy with another season, I have to give bonus points back to Phantom Blood because of the fact that if it had to reestablish everything, then it wouldn't be as good.
That makes sense.
At least in my mind.
Yep.
And I have Diamond is Unbreakable above Stardust Crusaders because, well, despite the fact that I liked the more, I guess, coherent, full overarching story that Stardust Crusaders had, it was, as you mentioned, just point to point, Monster of the Week very oriented. The characters themselves didn't get all of that much growth, whereas Diamond is Unbreakable, we had a lot of world building, a lot of character growth, and plenty of diverse characters in the cast.
Yeah, and I think most people would come out the same way, where Diamond is Unbreakable, regardless of the rest of the list, will always be higher than Stardust, or just Diamond is Unbreakable does Stardust Crusaders so much better.
Yeah.
Well, it only took us a year, but we finally got to Diamond is Unbreakable complete.
Alright, so I'm assuming we'll get back together 2022 for
Maybe
the next arc.
2023.
Yeah, so the next arc is Golden Wind, and I am very curious to see what your guys' opinions on this. The familiar JoJo song you hear with the memes is what's getting introduced in the next one.
Yep. And I've been dreading this season the most, mainly because of how bizarre the characters look.
Yeah.
Golden Wind, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has some very silly
costumes,
characters.
The clothes that they're all wearing are so outlandish.
Oh,
to be fair, this is also the one that has so many, yes, there's a lot of internet memes for JoJo in general. I feel like half of them are from fucking Golden Wind because of how ridiculous the characters look.
To be fair, this is just Rocky getting more powerful with character design. You're not even into it yet.
Him developing as an artist.
More powerful, he says.
Yeah. Yeah, Golden Wind, and who knows, maybe, if we're lucky, Stone Ocean will be fully animated by the time we get to it.
Maybe.
By the time we finish, or by the time we do an episode on Golden Wind, maybe Stone Ocean will be ready for us.
Yeah.
At this rate, it's entirely possible.
We'll see.
Yeah.